There were many things I liked at EB. Michael Rossman taught science, and I had his courses in middle school, and he was one of the leaders of the free speech movement at UC Berkeley in the 60s, and very much carried through that passion for speaking out and civic engagement into the science classroom, which I think is somewhat unusual. And I learned a lot in that class, a lot more than just science, which I think is something that for me kind of pervaded the EB education. Is not just about learning a technical skill or a language. It's about learning, the culture and philosophies, and reflecting more deeply on life, and the underpinnings of different theories. And I remember Michael, both taught us the science, but also was just a very big advocate for his students as individuals, got to know individual students, was sort of attuned to what they were interested in. And I, despite not being that personally interested in science, I signed up for, he had an after school science class that involved exploring around the EB campus and seeing the natural science that's all around us that we might not notice. So I remember exploring the plants around the train tracks and learning how old they were. And I remember I was the only woman in the after school science class and felt a little shy about it. I was definitely a shy student. And he was just a big proponent of me being involved, and made clear I could do anything I wanted to do. And that left a very big impression on me. And although I didn't go into science, just didn't have a personal interest, I think that spirit, the Michael Rossman spirit definitely carried through. Currently, I wear two professional hats. I am a Deputy Attorney General at the Office of the California Attorney General in the Public Rights Division, and I also teach at Berkeley Law School. So starting with the first hat, so as I mentioned, I work in the Public Rights Division, and the kind of law I practice is called affirmative litigation. And what that means is I don't defend the government. I file lawsuits on behalf of residents of California who are harmed to try to vindicate their rights. And the work I do is very broad. It touches on a lot of different areas of life. So areas of law I'm engaged in now are student loans and the federal government's failure to forgive the student loan debt of public servants. In particular, I'm also working on ghost guns and gun control, which is a growing issue and also an issue that's getting more recognition. I've also done work related to for-profit colleges that take advantage of Californians, and it's very rewarding work. The suits I work on can affect potentially millions of Californians and have potentially millions of dollars at stake. And it's really an honor as a native Californian, who grew up in the Bay Area, to be able to fight on behalf of my fellow Californians. And I have wonderful colleagues, and it's a job where I'm continually learning, so many different areas of law to be involved in. I think there are many unique things about EB, and one important one is its location in Berkeley, which has a very strong history and present and future of civic engagement. And that's a thread that ran through my studies at EB. And I knew from a very young age that I wanted to do some kind of public service. It took me a while to figure out what type of public service was right for me. And I got to explore important moral issues and issues about the human condition that I think are at the core of public service. And I got to explore those from, I think, an unusually young age at EB, reading, French literature and French poetry. I still remember a book I read, I think it was in middle school, called La Cicatrice, that made a very big impression on me. It's a very moving and also heartbreaking book. And I think it's very unusual to engage in that kind of deep sort of moral and philosophical thinking from a young age. And I got a lot out of that at EB, and it led me to approach my work with a sort of constantly questioning mind about, what's the root of the problem here, and how can I make, the lived experiences of others better. To parents just starting out at EB, I would encourage you to really take advantage of your child's education in a big way. EB education is not just for the children who are going to school every day. It really flows out to the parents, and I saw that accrue to the benefit of my own parents. My dad spoke French fluently. He had lived in France and Switzerland for over a decade before I was born. My mom did not really speak a drop of French before I started at EB, and my sister also went to EB, and both of us going there at the same time. My mom really embarked on the French language and French culture journey with us. So I would really encourage the parents to take advantage of everything EB has to offer, and that also includes taking advantage of what a tight-knit community it is. I formed some very close bonds with some fellow students. I started with in pre-K all the way through 8th grade, still very, very close in touch with them. And they're more like siblings than, former classmates. They're the people I've been Zooming with during the pandemic, meeting their babies. And I found that can also be true for parents. I remember, that group of my friends, my parents would get together with their parents. They would have, some kind of, nice French meal while we all played together. So it's really, it's a community for students and parents. Yeah, going to EB absolutely prepared me for every single step I have taken since. So I went to Berkeley High School right after EB, and then kind of continuing the EB thread, I went to a very unusual college, a great books program in New Mexico called St. John's College. EB definitely prepared me for that. Learning another language and another culture just gave me sort of a bravery in tackling new challenges, and sort of an expansive view of what I was capable of, and just an openness to new experiences and new ways of thinking. At St. John's College in New Mexico, all classes are required, so you can't say I'm a science person or I'm a literature person, so I'm going to stay in my niche. So I had to take, everything: philosophy, literature, science, math, and that's something that EB set me up for very well. And there are also other ways in my path in public service that, the French language skill has been very directly helpful. Before going to law school, I worked at a nonprofit in the Bronx in New York with women immigrants from Western Africa, who had, very recently arrived to New York, and many of whom, only spoke French and, maybe another dialect, but not English. So French was extraordinarily helpful, really invaluable. And that was really rewarding to have that skill just, embedded in me, and to be, especially being completely fluent. I could just see the relief that these women experience, being in a new country and meeting with someone who they could speak with at ease. And especially for French speaking immigrants, there just are less people in the US who speak French than, say, Spanish. So it was rewarding to feel like I was really adding value just from the French language skill. And then, fast forwarding a little bit, going to law school, I found that EB helped there as well. I think learning how to speak French fluently in particular has been very helpful in the law, in part because French language is very, very close attention to words and word choice. And that's something that's also very important in the law, being able to turn over different meanings in your mind and to think very carefully about words you're using in an oral argument or in a brief. And I have a memory of a really heated discussion, I think it was 5th grade, about what dictionaries were good dictionaries and what dictionaries were not good dictionaries. And that's actually a live debate in law. There'll be a lot of discussion about which dictionaries you can cite to have a definitive definition of a word. So that's something that I think is, well, both very uniquely French and very uniquely law. Yeah, I definitely consider myself a citizen of the world, and I do believe it started at EB. My work has taken me to many different pockets of the world. My first foray out was to Brazil, where I taught French and English in northern Brazil to teenagers embarking on jobs in the tourism industry. And a lot of French speaking tourists go to Brazil. So it's another example where my fluency in French was really valuable, and there weren't a lot of other people there to be able to provide that kind of service. And EB just made me just gave me a natural curiosity about what's going on around me in the world. So directly after undergrad, before going to law school, I studied public policy and focused in part on public health, and spent some time in international public health. So traveled to Uganda and Russia doing HIV/AIDS work. And going back to the term citizen of the world, I felt like I felt very much at home in different countries across the world. Grappling to try to speak languages that were new to me, because EB gave me that openness and confidence. I think EB has also helped me be a citizen of the world even when I'm at home. So, I was born and raised in Berkeley, of course, went to EB in Berkeley, and now I teach as an adjunct at UC Berkeley School of Law. And one of the courses I teach is legal research and writing to international Master of Law students. And they're amazing students. They come from all over the world. I've taught judges, prosecutor from Ghana, Supreme Court litigator from Brazil, academic from Austria. So, even still, in the same city I was born and raised and grew up and went to EB, I have found, a way to be a citizen of the world and engaging with really accomplished lawyers from all across the world. And I think one important skill that EB has given me is feeling like in some way I have been in their seat before. I can sort of see a little bit through their eyes, even though I, of course, started at EB very young in pre-K and learned French very early. I did go to school briefly in France in the French public school system. I think it might have been in, I want to say, sixth or seventh grade, and EB set me up very well to be in the French public school system. But it still was, an adjustment being, a young child going to a different school in a different country. And I think that kind of cultural humility and that experience of being across the world in an education setting has helped me be a teacher and to support to these international law students at Berkeley Law. I would definitely consider sending my kids to EB. I had a really wonderful experience both on the academic side and on the personal side. Being exposed to a different language and culture, is really embedded deeply in me. I still dream in French sometimes. That's, an indication of how rich that experience was for me and how big of a part it is of who I am. And the friends I made at EB are really like family members. They're the people I call if something great happens, if something bad happens. So I do feel like going to EB is like growing up in a small village in the city of Berkeley. And I think that's a really wonderful way to grow up. And I think it is rarer, the world is becoming more dispersed and depersonalized. And I think there's something very special about the close-knit EB environment. That's a great way to grow up. And I would definitely want my kids to grow up in that kind of intimate, supportive, but also academically rigorous environment. I think I love everything I do. I think my motto is where there's a will, there's a way. So there, there's nothing I'm doing now that I don't feel passionate about. I think it's just being very invested in all the projects I'm involved in. Just keeps me going and keeps me eager to push all of them.